Community with Lone Star Community Radio. Path to the Plate is a research-based education program that helps consumers understand how their food choices impact their health by making the connection to agriculture, learning about how food is grown and produced, and how consumers can make better food choices for themselves and their families. Path to the Plate is all about dispelling myths and misconceptions. Find out more online at pathtotheplate.tamu.edu. We are Texas A&M AgriLife Extension, helping Texans make their lives better.
Thank you for listening to Lone Star Community Radio. This program was broadcasted and recorded live from the LSCR studios in downtown Conroe, Texas. Lone Star Community Radio is supported by listeners like you. Donate and sponsor today. For more information on getting involved with Lone Star Community Radio, contact us at lscrstudios@gmail.com or visit us online at www.irlonestar.com.
You are listening to Lone Star Community Radio on 104.5 KCZW LP Conroe and 106.1 KZCCLP Conroe and worldwide on irlonestar.com.
Good morning. Why do I want to say good morning, Richard? It's because I was on at 10 a.m. for so many years. And so it just seems like it's always morning to me. But it's afternoon, and I just appreciate so much you guys joining us. And it's just a beautiful day out in the neighborhood in Conroe. I mean, we're having like a little cool front come through. It's 90 degrees. It's just a beautiful day as long as you're standing inside looking through the window in air conditioning. I'm telling you, it has been just brutal. And I want to tell you how excited I am about the guest we have today. Is Bill Morris. Bill Morris is he was a sheriff and he was the mayor of Memphis, which means he had to run into Elvis once in a while, but that's okay. He grew up kind of with Elvis, and Elvis dated his sister and then married her. And no, Elvis didn't marry her. Bill married Ann, and Ann and Elvis were in the same rooms at school, and it's a big deal. So they all know each other. They came from the same background, and he's got a lot of cool stories about Elvis. But to me, something that's very interesting is that when he was the sheriff, he had to go extradite James Earl Ray, who had assassinated Martin Luther King, and that was a big story. Of course, most of you probably are too young to remember that, but it was very impactful. And in the 60s, this all happened in the 60s, and there was Bobby Kennedy, John Kennedy, and different people that were assassinated started making us feel like, what's going on with this country? It's coming apart. But he was there, and it is amazing. If you want to see the book that he has written, it's called A Legendary Life, and he also talks about Elvis, and there's pictures and things like that. He's got a lot of great stories in that book. But you can go to the Facebook page, The Cindy Cochran Show, and there's pictures there that you can see. Anyway, I wanted to tell or ask Richard, and you don't have to say anything, Richard. You can just nod your head. That's fine. Did you see the video of that Little League player? Did you cry? You didn't cry? Uh-oh. He's going to have to make a comment about that. Oh, the one that went up and hugged the pitcher who had just knocked him in the head. He saw that the pitcher was upset. He left first base, went over, and hugged him. So what do you have to say about that?
I don't know.
Didn't you think that was extremely great? The caring that they had, and what great sportsmanship that was to do that. Or would you have said, okay, he's off first base, go touch him, and he's out?
Yeah, I would have done the both.
That's what you would.
I would have
Okay.
done both. I'd be like, thanks, man. You're out.
They were on national TV, the pitcher and the player. and it was just precious. He just said, I just saw that he was so upset, and he thought, it might have been worse than it was, and so I had to go give him a hug. Now, they're like little kids, and it's incredible. I just had to reminisce about that story, because a lot of times you don't see that, and you don't even think kids would feel that way. But the picture said he thought that the kid was being taken to the hospital. He didn't know what had happened to him. He was just sitting there, and he hung his head, and he didn't want to see what was going on. So he didn't know that he was all okay.
Yeah, he went to first base.
He didn't even see that. He didn't know he went to first base, and then he came over from first base, and I bet if he looked up, he thought the guy was going to come over and slug him.
Who ended up winning the game?
Who cares?
Exactly.
It doesn't matter. It was.
Well, I mean, if you're in the Little League World Series, I would like to win the game, wouldn't you? Do you want to cancel that game because that kid got hit in the head?
No, but I do know that Pearland, their little league, won the Southwest Division, and they'll be going on to bigger and better things.
Yeah. Now they're going to try to hit each other all the time so they can get on television.
Yeah, I'd say, did you see that? He had a helmet on, but it knocked the helmet off. So he said he just had a bruise. It was okay. But it was the sweetest story that came on the news. I mean, there were so many things that
I would have tagged him out. And then it'll be chaos on the field.
Can you imagine?
Imagine all the family, all the parents, dads. Like,
yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. But everybody was cheering, and it just was such a bonding moment. I don't think they cared who won or lost. But he said my mom just cried. She just cried. She didn't know what was going on or what happened, and I saw her crying. I didn't know whether to go talk to her, but I was talking to my dad, and my dad said, everything's going to be okay. Let's go with it. I'm proud of you, really proud of you. And that was it. But I was proud of both of them. I mean, that the sympathy that pitcher had for what he had done, and how he felt so bad about it. That was good. I mean, he could have gone like, yo, man, fine. Okay, just get back on the base before I put you out. He didn't do that. They were all sweet. Anyway, so that's what I wanted to talk about. And Richard and I had a whole conversation yesterday, and we really helped people, and it was such an uplifting conversation, Richard, and so many people learned about things that they really hadn't thought of before. And Richard, you evoke such a different response than I do about things. And so I appreciate you, Richard, and your weird sense of things. I think it's great. So anyway, today we're going to be talking to Bill Morris, and we're going to take a short break. We're going to call Bill, and then we will be right back. You're listening to the Cindy Cochran Show that is live on YouTube, and will be also recorded, and as soon as the show is over, it'll be on. You can watch it again and again on YouTube. Also on Facebook, the Facebook page, Lone Star Community Radio, and it's on so many platforms I can't even begin to count. So I wanted to let you know that this is everywhere, and you won't miss it. I will be right back. You're listening to the Cindy Cochran Show, Real Reality Radio.
Hey, tune in to the Bridge Podcast TX Tuesdays at 11 a.m., where we are connecting commerce with community, interviewing business owners and leaders in the community, allowing the audience to peek behind the curtain of what inspires, motivates, drives these individuals to have meaningful, positive impact in this community. For more information about the show, log into irlonestar.com/TBPTX.
Have a legal question? Are you a resident of Montgomery County? Call 281-645-6344 to talk to a volunteer attorney from the Woodlands Bar Association. We answer the phones on the first Monday of every month at 281-645-6344 from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. to provide general legal information and information about legal resources to Montgomery County residents.
You're back on the Cindy Cochran Show, and I hope you're having a great afternoon. We've got a great guest today, and so you're going to have to listen to everything he says because he's got a lot of information to bestow on the Cindy Cochran audience. Bill Morris, are you there?
I'm here, Cindy. How are you?
I'm doing fine. I've been so excited about this interview with you, and we've talked on the phone, and it just kills me to have to. I said, like, I don't find out everything right now because we want to do this interview. But you have got so many stories, and I want to first thank Don Wilson for introducing me to you. And I know you were friends with Don Wilson, or you still are. I mean, but.
Okay.
I really appreciate Don. He has been like the floodgate of celebrities that I can call on, and they say, "Well, okay, I'll do it, but I'm doing this for Don, you know." And I went, "Oh yes, I know you're doing it for Don," and it's really cute. They just most everybody that knows Don loves Don, and I just appreciate you, and I am so excited to find out about your legendary life. I think that was a perfect title to give your book.
Well, when my wife was sick, after all these many, many years with a stroke, she suggested that we take out the time to record some of the experiences, historical experiences that took place in Memphis during the times that I was growing up and going to college and working and sheriff and being mayor and so forth, all about the civil rights movement and so forth. So anyhow, I was taking care of her for a number of years as a caregiver, and so I began to write this book. And when I got a publisher that looked at it, they kind of tried to come up with a title, and I was surprised that they suggested a legendary life.
Oh,
because actually, looking back on that, I kind of felt like that it was, considering where I came from and all the events of my life that took place. So it was the book to me was just the ability to have something written for my family and my kids,
yes,
my grandkids, future grandkids, and so forth. Plus, it gives a history of the events in Memphis that had a national and international overtone to it because of the assassination of Martin Luther King and Elvis Presley maturing in his quest to be number one in the world. But
right.
anyway, those were some good times that we had, and then there were some bad times. The bad times was, of course, the civil rights problems during that period of time. And, of course, the 60s, Cindy, for people that might remember, maybe they don't remember, but in the 60s we had 3 assassinations.
Right, that's right.
John Kennedy, his brother Bob Kennedy, and Martin Luther King. That's almost unbelievable that all happened during that powder keg, if you will, time in the United States on the heels of John Kennedy's suggestion that, we need to take control of our society and make it more responsive to the needs of people of America. So anyhow, that sort of got me started on the political scene.
Well, I think that's so true because television brought all that into our homes and all that was going on, and you thought, well, it's not going to ever happen here, but it happened there, and we saw how horrible it was, and you felt so bad, and like, how can people do this to each other? And so it was it was a horrible thing that y'all had to go through, but it sure was a lesson for everybody to see what can come of it, though.
Sure, but Sandy, it wasn't just Memphis.
No.
Because Memphis, actually, when the riots started, assassination took place, Memphis was better prepared to deal with the response to that than Chicago, for example, or Washington, D.C., or Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
All of the eruption as a result of the assassination really just blew up everywhere. And in response to the fact that Dr. King was killed, and we in Memphis had a labor strike, and it created marches and a lot of problems in the city, and we had activated the National Guard, all the law enforcement agencies in Memphis, and we got to the point where we were ready when the day that Martin Luther King.
Okay.
We were prepared. We already had troops on the ground, so that when I curfew that night, we closed the town down. Now, my friend and the sheriff of Chicago at that time, he had less fortune there because they had no idea this was going to happen, but they had the same explosive response there and in Washington, D.C. and Los Angeles and all the other cities around, particularly where you have a high concentration of African-American population.
Right.
So anyway, we got everything under control very quickly. Few buildings were burned, few Molotov cocktails, and that type of thing. But it was less than, let's just say, suburbs of Chicago.
Well, that was one of the questions I was going to ask you, but I've got to find out, where were you when you found out that the assassination happened?
I was 2 minutes away from where the assassination took place, making an arrest. A couple of the what we called the raiders at that point, but they were people who were in town to create some issues. And I was on the way out right near the place where King was killed when a car actually almost sideswiped me, and I pulled them over. And they were in a car that was actually leased to the Southern Leadership Conference. And that was a surprise to me, but I get the call immediately while this happened, and then I left the scene. And the then mayor of the city, Henry Loeb, came by, and I handed him my weapon, and I said, "Would you please hold these guys until the deputies get here to pick them up?" And I proceeded to the scene, and where the crowd had gathered, and the weapon was still lying in front of the door where the accused had dropped the gun and went on the run and headed out of town.
And nobody had touched it or anything?
I'm sorry?
And no one had touched the gun, right?
No. It was part of his luggage and the gun.
Oh.
So, as long as he dropped everything, jumped in his car, and vamoosed. And what surprised them, this is really the interesting thing, the number of people and next door to this building and the Lorraine Motel was a fire station. And this is kind of a neat story. And a lot of the troops, National Guard people, along with Highway Patrol, and even some of the local police were in a TAC unit, what they call a TAC unit, 3 vehicles loaded with troops, police in the city, and they had stopped in the fire station because they make good coffee. While they were having coffee, the gun went off, and Dr. King was shot right behind the fire station at the Lorraine Motel on the balcony. And everybody came running out. So did James Earl Ray. He came running out. He saw all these people. He thought they were responding to him, and actually they were, because they only responded to the sound.
Yeah.
And so he ran hurriedly, got in his car, and went on the lam.
So it was really chaotic, but he didn't know. He didn't know that they weren't there for him. They were responding to the noise, and he could have just acted like one of the crowd.
That was very impressive. And so I was there and began immediately to do what we needed to do. Then I went behind the building. Then was Dr. King had been shot, and they were removing the body. I had deputies on the scene there at that point. And Dr. Jesse Jackson was there, and I talked to him, and we discussed. And that is part of the history in Smithsonian. It's got the conversations that we had at that point as part of their assassination of Dr. King, which is available on the Google, I suppose. Or
Right.
But anyway, that was interesting because it happened so quick. Nobody had anticipated.
No.
This was
But it seemed like that was it Jesse Jackson that was pointing his hand. He had his arm up and was pointing like where the shot came from in that picture.
That's what he thought. He was actually standing on the ground below the steps when the shot went off. And so I think as I was talking to him, he was kind of responding to what he thought was the area it came from. Meanwhile, I'd already seen the gun.
Right.
And in the front of the door from the place where James Earl Ray was staying.
So
anyway,
so it was from the bottom. He was standing on the ground and shot up at him.
Who James Earl?
Yeah, James Earl Ray shot up at him.
No. He shot from a window on the second floor of it.
The second floor. Oh, okay.
From the room house away from there, and that's what Jesse Jackson was pointing at. We assume.
Okay.
Pointing, it was up, even probably higher than the balcony of the Lorraine Motel, where Dr. King was standing when the shot was fired, and one shot killed him.
Oh.
That the gun jammed at that point. He never got off but one shot, but the one shot went right through the neck and the jugular area, and of course Dr. King died from that pretty quickly.
Well, it's a good thing the gun jammed, because how many more of those people, Jesse Jackson himself and those that were standing around, that could have been shot as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There were 3 or 4 people around that could have been very easily if he had chosen a different weapon.
Right.
Of course, there's always been a conversation about his lack of knowledge of guns, because a pump 30-06, as we describe it as a hunter, you don't see in very many pump guns, sort of 30-06 gun weapons. You usually get efficiency is better with bolt action. Even automatic's better, but the bolt action is clearer, easier to reload. But anyhow, in this case, the first round after the first shot. So the story goes.
Well, what kind of head start did James Earl Ray have on you guys after you started going after him?
Probably 5 minutes. But everybody was chasing. All the law enforcement agencies were on the lookout for a white Mustang, and that's Friday. And there was a lot of white Mustangs apparently, because as he discussed with me later on, he was so excited he didn't know at that point where he was. He had not apparently made any master plans about.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yes, and as I think I quoted him saying that he drove, left there as quick as he could, hit the expressway, and next thing he knew, he was going as fast as he could to get out of Memphis. And he apparently went out through East Memphis and got on a road to Alabama. And the next thing he thought about trying to define where he was said, "Welcome to Alabama." So that's kind of the way that day went.
Now
we ended up getting the car back, brought it back to Memphis, and kept it for many, many years in custody of the local government.
Well, who stopped him?
I don't have the details on that.
Oh, okay. So he was stopped. They put him in jail in Alabama.
Well, no. In the book it says pretty clear he left, made it to Atlanta, into Canada, England, and he got arrested in England, and that's where we extradited him from. And I arranged a rest transportation with the United States government to take a plane, pick him up, and bring him back to Memphis. And I took him in custody, read him his rights, made the arrest, kept him to go to trial when time came, at which time he pled guilty after a long period of time, and he went to be sentenced to state prison in Tennessee, and that's where he died.
Well, I know that when you were reading his rights, seeing the video of him, and he never looked up, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And because did anyone ever ask? I'm sure you guys did. Like, what was his reasoning? What caused him to do that?
You know what? That wasn't my job to find out that. My job was to take him into custody and keep him until he had a day in court. Nobody. Yeah, so that was not my responsibility. The attorney general, then their job was, without his support, to try to get enough evidence to present to the grand jury and to the jury to convict him for first-degree murder.
That's just chilling. It is chilling because that was everybody at my age remembers where they were when they heard that, because it was like kind of last straw, like, oh, not again. And they knew that it was going to cause a lot of problems, and a lot of people were going to be mad. And this was, a time where we were all trying to just get over the president and Bobby Kennedy, and this was so it was a really hard time for all of us, and for you to be right there in the middle of it. Was it surreal for you, or was it?
It was, but being the sheriff, I had access to the federal government, state government, local governments, a lot of people with expertise in the Bureau of Prisons, and it was we put together, I thought, without question, the best system of incarceration to protect the prisoner. Because as you remember, that was an embarrassing factor when Oswald, who was supposed to have killed John Kennedy,
right,
was killed in the arms of the policeman in Dallas.
Yes.
And it's not going to happen on my watch that I could help it. And so we went full bore to make sure that the rights of the individual, it was not up to me and my department to determine his innocence or guilt, but to take care of him, because you see, our judicial system was being tested. Can at first get a fair trial, regardless of the circumstances of a major deal as assassination of the president or Martin Luther King or whomever. So anyway, we made sure, with the help that we had from the Bureau of Prisons, the Vice President of the United States got involved, and so being the chief law enforcement officer and custodian, all the decisions that were made relative to care and maintenance of the prisoner came under my jurisdiction, and nobody photographed James Earl Ray ever from the time I took him into custody until I gave him over to the state several months later, except me. And I had a photographer from the university to make that photograph because there was such demand by the world media.
Sure.
To see that photograph. But nobody sees the photograph you see in that book with me holding him and getting him up the Thompson's tank of the armored car. That's the only photograph that we had made ever, and by our photographer, and all the other photographs that with that are still in the archives here in Memphis.
Really? Oh, that was brilliant on your part not to have that out, because that would even create more turmoil, more division.
Oh, yeah. All the questions that would be raised. We had a wonderful judge who 3 days after the guilty plea of 4 died at his desk. But the judge was such a brilliant man, and he worked with us, Attorney General, and all involved during all this period of time. And so the procedures that were used, of course, will be tested by the the witness lawyers about everything you do. Was too much light in the cell, the food wasn't good, and neither the doctor. Anything they can do to change the course of events. We never were caught short of our process all during that time, and then we brought him in custody. I might add, he left my county office building, sheriff's department, and full uniform dress of a Shelby County deputy.
Oh, really?
When we left with him, all the media around thought that was a carload of deputies going somewhere, James Earl Ray, and we were transported up towards Nashville to deliver to the Tennessee Department of Corrections. It's just one of those things that you don't tell people.
No.
Didn't tell everybody else what we were doing.
But that was so smart of y'all. That was great.
Somebody asked after all this was over, said, "How do you come with all those ideas?"
Yeah.
Frankly, I watched Mission Impossible. And that's the truth.
Tom Cruise would be so happy to hear that.
Elvis said, "You learn a lot and have a lot of vision from comic books." And the same for watching these kind of shows. And so then a very young sheriff and never had law enforcement experience prior to me as an elected sheriff, it was a learning curve that had to be developed quickly.
But that is...
Including the civil rights law
in
September 1964, 4 years earlier.
Oh, man, that is just amazing. That has got to be something that nobody knows, and you just let us in on it. I really appreciate that. That's amazing. But I mean, like what has always been talked about is just the fact that he got away with it. He thought he got away with it. Y'all got him, and you brought him back, and he stood trial, and he must have been, there wasn't the death penalty, right? I mean, it wasn't y'all that was doing the trial, but
no,
they didn't have the death penalty where he was, right?
I think he got life in prison. Oh yeah, we got death penalty, but he got life in prison.
Yeah.
So the interesting thing in my book, I say that I do not think that his guilty plea was enough to complete the investigation. And I criticized the director of the FBI, Mr. Hoover, for calling the investigation complete when they did not know if there had been a conspiracy. They did not know if there had been a collusion, except that for those of us who were familiar with the case, we knew that James Earl Ray had two felony brothers. Been convicted of felony crimes and had a connection with a lawyer, J.B. Stoner, who was ultimately arrested for being a part of the conspiracy to blow up the church in Birmingham, Alabama. So I felt like there was others, might not have been a predetermined conspiracy, but at best there had to be some collusion, and no doubt in my mind that his brothers were very suspect because they had a reputation.
Right.
In time. But in
connection.
Other words, once they arrested him, the Justice Department was satisfied, let it go. I would like to have had then more follow-up with that guilty plea. Why did he plead guilty the last minute when the lawyer, Percy Foreman from Houston,
yes,
was ready to go to trial, except that the day before he was ready to go to trial, his brothers show up and visited with him in the cell, and then the attorney went there. It'd be easy to speculate that had he gone to trial, a lot more dominoes would have fallen for the collusion, suspect, even maybe it's conspiracy, but somebody wanted Martin Luther King dead.
Right.
Somebody was willing to pay a good price to get that done, whether it was a basis of money, a possibility of freedom, because he was a felon on the run.
Right.
And the only way he was going to ever be free was to be. If I had been a lawyer, I might have said this to him: go to a non-extradition country and get caught and be brought back, and if you were found not guilty of that charge, you then could not be charged for any of the other crimes. So it's been an intriguing thing for me to watch. I am now 90 years of age next month, so
I can't believe that.
my view in the rearview mirror.
Yeah.
Is
right.
To me, the '60s and the Civil Rights Act and all that went on then. I felt like there was a lot of unfinished business with Sirhan in Los Angeles killing Bobby Kennedy, and of course the terrible tragedy of allowing Oswald to be killed before he was tried. And I don't know how did that happen, and who wanted Oswald dead, and
so that he wouldn't go to trial. You're right. You're right.
John Kennedy, right then and there. So so much suspect.
Well, that's why when they did that, they did a play on TV with the trial.
Yeah.
They did the trial to see. This is because people were just clamoring for more information. They didn't, and so many different theories were going out there. So they thought, well, let's just do a trial and see, what would happen. The thing about it is we knew that he had done it, but it was like putting everybody that was around there, the police officers and all that, to find out more about it. We found out so much. There was so much information. I remember because it happened in Dallas. I was so ashamed of Dallas. When John Kennedy was shot. It made me feel like, how could this happen in Texas? No, this can't happen in Texas. And I didn't even want to go to Dallas. I told my mother and dad, I said, no, let's don't go to Dallas.
Memphis should never have felt guilty, nor should Dallas, Texas, nor should Los Angeles. It has nothing to do where it happened.
Right.
Because it has nothing to do with it. People who follow and to commit those crimes do it out of crime of convenience.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't blame a city. I knew the sheriff in Dallas. His name was Bill Decker. Bill Decker had been the sheriff for 40 plus years.
Wow.
And I had worked with him. And as a matter of fact, I went there to look at the jail that was being built in Dallas. And his desk was less than the distance of a football field from where Kennedy was shot on the Simmons Freeway.
Yeah, right.
I mean, his desk physically right on the Simmons Freeway, outside the window, right at the park. And so, the question was, who was in charge of the motorcade direction?
Mm-hmm.
Is this would normally have gone, or was it set up to go there so that somebody might have known that Oswald was there, or somebody was going to shoot us? Whether it's Oswald or somebody else,
Right.
He might have been a tall guy. I don't know, but it's a lot of strange coincidences that took place there. But
And you always think, like, these people aren't smart enough or intelligent enough. They don't have that kind of background to plan out something from beginning to end, and you just feel like there's got to be other people involved.
But I think that's right. There's so many mysterious things that happen over the years. But part of the mystery to me is from 1961 or 62, 63 to 68 that you have 3 assassinations. And perhaps there are those who are satisfied with the outcome. But if you have a little bit of curiosity,
Mm-hmm.
and you put a little bit along, if you read a little bit about other stories of it equally intriguing, you have to have some thought about, have questions as to what. And I raised some of those questions in my book.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, that's what you've got to. you have got people now on the edge of their seat about the book. So you told me you can go to BillMorris.com.
Actually, I just have one place to go, and that's through my own operation. It's called BillMorrisBook.com.
That's so easy. That's so easy to do that. Yeah.
BillMorrisBook.com. And I can order the book. And if they would like to have it autographed, I can do that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
But, I'd love people that might have an interest. Of course, it has about the assassination of Dr. King, and it has about my personal relationship with Elvis all during those years. But you know what? The human side of the thing, during all of this, being involved in all of this, in 1997, when I was leaving the office of mayor, my wife of 60 years had a stroke. Well, it was 60 years, but she was only 61.
Mm-hmm.
So we'd been married 43 years, but she had a stroke. So my life, in terms of law enforcement and politics and all of that, stopped that day because I took the rest of for 19 years. I became her nurse, her doctor, her cook, all that goes with that in the same house where I live even to this day. And it gave me the greatest experience that another person can possibly have. And that's just sort of a testimony of the real important things in life. And that's when I was
You're
able
right.
to take her, that she died 6 years ago. And of course, Elvis was a good friend of hers. They went to school together, graduated together, and I went to graduation the night that my wife Ann, and Elvis graduated in the same class at Humes High School in Memphis. And I tell about all of that. And the years after that, my relationship with Elvis.
Well, that's what.
Was a high point in my life, I have to tell you, because he was a wonderful person.
He was. Well, let me first congratulate you, because you kind of skimmed over that what you had done for your wife and how you recognize the priorities and what you should be doing, what people
Right.
all should do. And not everybody does that, Bill. And that just shows all that you've been through and all has built such a character in you. I mean, good characteristics in you that you would immediately respond to that. And also, I'm sure the deep love you have for your wife. But that's amazing, and you should be applauded and get the Purple Heart for something like that, even though you've done all these incredible things. But that is pinnacle. And I think you being friends with Elvis, how interesting that was, because he was so affected by Martin Luther King's assassination and Bobby Kennedy's death, and he was. It affected him too, like the civil rights crisis and the civil rights marches and all that he was certainly he knew about, he saw, and through you and you having done what you did, I think on that 68 special that he did, when he sang that last song, and it wasn't the Christmas song that Colonel Tom Parker wanted. It was
that song. That song, I think, is one of the highlights of his total career, because he sent more messages.
Right.
His soul.
Right.
That one song that you could possibly sing. And at my funeral, the funeral of my wife, the picture in the paper of he and I singing.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, that's the only picture of Elvis in the world of him singing with somebody else. He didn't sing with anybody.
That's true. Boy, you're right. You are right.
I'm telling you, that one photograph is only available. That's me. And I did not know that for years. But if you want to get a photograph of Elvis and somebody else singing, you can't find it.
But in your book, it's there, right?
That photograph like that, except maybe when they him singing on stage with Frank Sinatra. But just as an individual guy.
That's so funny that you'd mention the Frank Sinatra thing, Bill. Excuse me for interrupting, but because he hated that whole situation he was put in with Frank Sinatra. I mean, that's what was told, by people that were there, and how he was upset about the hound dog and all that stuff that they did.
Yeah.
So I'm sure he didn't mind, and he was honored to be able to stand next to you and sing anything. And
hey, this was in a social environment, and it's sweet in Las Vegas. We were just having fun. He liked gospel, so did I. And that song that we were singing, he was singing, and I was mouthing. You know how that goes.
Mm-hmm.
I could sing him, but how great thou art.
Oh yes, oh
and that
yes.
versions of that. When my wife died 6 years ago, at the funeral, it was Elvis singing "How Great Thou Art."
Oh
And
man.
it was just, and it brought tears to my eyes thinking about it.
Oh
And
sure.
Today, that is my favorite all-time song. And I can look at that picture of him not singing,
Mm-hmm.
and it brings out the heart and soul of a man. Because he sang that because that's his heart told him.
Yes, yeah. And he loved gospel music. I think that was, and he would do that on stage in front of all these people that came to hear him sing Hound Dog and Heartbreak Hotel. But he would share that gospel, kind of message with them, and it was beautiful. It was a beautiful thing that he did, and
imagine
the influence he had on a lot of people, doing that. And when
I
I'm
have to inject this. Where I grew up, and Elvis grew up, was in rural North Mississippi. And our exposure to a lot of any type of music group, tents would be brought into his area, my area, and we'd have gospel quartets, have what they call a singing.
right.
Singing, and I never had the money to pay to get in, but I'd sneak out of the tent. My brothers, for example, from Memphis, that was my first group. And of course, a lot of the groups that backed up Elvis years later, many of them were singing long before Elvis ever hit the stage, so to speak. But he loved the Blackwood Brothers and the group that he sang with. And they had more fun
Mm-hmm.
messing around when they were going to have a recording. They backed him up and whatever he's doing. Plus the harmony, he loved to sing harmony with them. But
Right.
he loved the atmosphere, like in his suite or in his house in the basement with the guys hanging around and playing around with songs. And he was just such an incredible, charismatic, loving guy. And that just he never ever played the role that measured up to success because he had more fun playing around with guys
Mm-hmm.
that we get out and shoot fireworks and what have you. He never was a social climber, and he never was in politics.
No, and I think that's what made him so relatable to so many people all the way across the board. It didn't matter what nationality you were or what religion you were. You just knew this was a good guy. This was, a sincere guy. He wasn't perfect, and that made him even more relatable. But there was a time when I had gone to interview Tom Jones, and one of the people that worked with Tom Jones was talking about going over to Elvis's house. And he says, but we don't go over there much anymore because all he wants to do is read the Bible and wants to talk about stuff like that. And we don't think that's fun.
Okay, I don't think that. I don't believe that. People. I don't know where people get some of this stuff they talk about. Now, he's been dead 45 years, and I'll bet you there are people been in Memphis this next 4 days during the Elvis week will start telling stories about them and Elvis. And they weren't even born when he died. But the thing that I think that always impressed me, when we nominated him, the Junior Chamber of Commerce nominated Elvis as one of the 10 outstanding young men in America. He had to be 35 or under 36. And he never liked awards. He didn't accept it. And he said, we convinced him that, like George Bush was one of the judges, I might add.
Oh, man.
And so, and people like, matter of fact, Richard Nixon's press secretary was one of the winners, and a guy who was an astronaut, part of the astronaut program. But anyhow, finally I got him to agree. So January 16th, 1970, he had been granted and awarded the one of the 10 outstanding young men of America. And he was given a plaque. And he was so humble. And he was such a great host to these other 9 guys that is unbelievable. He was almost tearful because it meant that the JCs wanted nothing except to say, Elvis is from Memphis. We're proud of him. We think he's the greatest entertainer his age group in the world. And a lot of people agree then, and more agree even now. But it was great. He took that plaque with him. He went. I'm sitting at the table with him when he received the morning award, and we co-host. I looked at the security for the dinner where he had and the cocktail party at his house. So he had a great. Just didn't do that.
No, that's what's so amazing. I think that's why just the people loved him, Bill. They just loved him, and when he died, and the response that happened. My sister was a huge fan, and she's a CPA, and she dropped everything she was doing, told her husband, meet her at the airport. They're going to Graceland. And he went, what? She said, Elvis has died, and I have to be there. And so, I mean, that's kind of the reaction, the strong reaction that people had. They just had to be near there. They just want to show their respect and their love for him. And you were part of was it the honor guard or the at his funeral?
Yeah, what we did, I was number car 7, I think, in the procession, and I had my family in my car.
Mm-hmm.
But what really was shocking to me, I had been at the house 2 days until all this, helping with all the arrangements and so forth. But what really blew me away was that we come out the driveway and get onto Elvis Presley Boulevard, which later became Elvis. And I could not believe in that short period of time, for miles, all the people that had gathered. I don't even know how they got there, and those numbers. And I still have all those photographs of the people. I was stunned because I had traveled with Elvis a lot of places. We'd gone to the crowds in Tuscaloosa and Las Vegas and all these different places, but they loved it. People had. He never sold an empty. He never sang to an empty seat.
No.
Empty seat.
And he was always so surprised. From one of his girlfriends, Mindy Miller, said how they drive up to a concert and he saw all those people. He goes, I can't believe that many people still like me or want to hear me sing. I don't get it. So I think it's amazing. And Bill, I just can't thank you enough for all the information you've given us and all the stories and stuff that you have told. Is just amazing, absolutely amazing. So I wanted to tell you thank you for being here, and you guys go get his book. I know you want to. BillMorrisBook.com. Thank you so much, Bill. Okay, we're going to be right back, guys. No, we talked all the way through. Oh, man. Well, I couldn't help it. I couldn't stop listening to what he had to say. Okay, we'll see you tomorrow. And tomorrow we've got Steve Stollier. He's going to be amazing. He's the one that's been Groucho Marx. He was his secretary for so long. And he's got a book out called Raised Eyebrows. So you stay with us. We'll be here tomorrow at 2 o'clock. Thank you so much. Take care. And first responders, we love you.